This is momentum, a motion of conversation.
A symphony of thought.
United to increase representation,
to create new access points,
and improve the employment pipeline.
Helping individuals grow as future creative leaders.
That means making room,
Amplifying voices, empowering perspectives, fostering connections,
And creating spaces for thought leaders to come together.
helping make every space
An inclusive space.
building upon ideas,
forming partnerships,
and focusing on sustainability
Instead of reinventing the wheel,
now, tomorrow, and in the future.
there is always work to be done. But we know we are stronger together. Get involved, inspire others.
and take action.
Time to break, reinvent, impact, change. Join us in transforming the industry brick by brick at brickfoundation.org.
Like, I could remember just being in school, I was like, wouldn't it be so cool if one day I get to work at like a feature job? And look, here I am.
The day-to-day of my job is the best part of my job. I get to hang out with other artists from all over the world and sit around and create things. We craft stories and characters, we create worlds, we share ideas, and then I get to take all of that and apply it into what I think tells a really great story.
I think if you're passionate about art, it's totally worth pursuing. It's a lot of hard work, but the world is always in need of new art from unique voices.
Dame consejos, esa es la mejor parte del trabajo. Y cuando tú logras cambiarle la vida a una persona en ese sentido, o inspirarla para que siga adelante, el trabajo está hecho. Es para mí la mejor parte de mi trabajo.
Also, know that everyone is struggling to find confidence and skill, not just you, even the professionals.
I'd say being a team player is a really important part of being a good storyboard artist, just as much as the drawing aspect of it. Like being open and never saying no to notes and brainstorming and collaboration. It always just will plus a project. Most importantly, just always be learning. You're never going to stop learning.
Being able to take critiques and being a really great person, I feel like is really, really important in my opinion.
I grew up probably from the age of 5 drawing and writing stories and was always motivated by an incredibly supportive family and parents. And now I get to continue that here at DreamWorks, surrounded by incredibly supportive teams of people and artists. And in a way, I get paid to be my kid's self.
Never give up, never be discouraged by, not hearing back from a certain job or not hear back from a certain application. It's just one of many, and half of recruiting is timing. Half of recruiting is, whether that company is looking for someone with select skills and, you fall in line with those skills or not.
And then trying to find an entry-level position either as an intern or a production assistant is a really great way to get started, because the more you know about the process from the very bottom to the very top, it really helps you as you move forward in your career to build from the base of having been hands-on and to learn from every aspect and building those relationships.
Bueno, rasgos importantes, nada, tener pasión, contar historias, entretener, inspirar, no rendirse y siempre querer mejorar. O sea, tú todos los días tienes algo que aprender y eso te va a llevar a ser mucho mejor. Siempre saber que tienes muchas cosas que aprender es lo más importante.
My parents always told me I should try to do what I love. They worked really hard to give me all the opportunities I got, and I was super privileged to be able to get into an artistic field, especially in a country like Mexico.
Some really important traits that came in handy stepping into my role were having a strong sense of leadership, being very passionate about storytelling, being willing to take constructive criticism, being a really good collaborator. But as a woman in the field, I think one of the biggest ones is having the voice to confidently speak up when I have something to contribute.
If you work in any type of creative field, it's really important to stay inspired and to help yourself stay inspired by taking care of your mind and taking care of your body. You know, working yourself constantly and not taking any breaks is really detrimental. And even if it feels like it's the right move at the time, if you do it over and over again over long periods of time, it's what can lead to things like burnout and also injuries that can prevent you from doing what you love for the rest of your life.
Advice I wish I had gotten when I was first starting out in the industry is that your career is a marathon, not a race.
Growing up, I was really shy and really quiet, but I always really enjoyed drawing and painting and reading. And so I think it made sense as an adult to direct my art career towards something that I not only loved as a kid, but I really wanted the ability to inspire kids like me who are maybe shy, maybe they don't have a lot to say, but they have really big imaginations, and I think that's really important.
Having the curiosity, I think that's one of the most important traits to have in this field, just being curious about how things are done, how things are made in different cultures, and just like trying to learn as much as you can and then applying that to your art.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this little video, and yeah, see you guys soon.
This is momentum, a motion of conversation.
A symphony of thought.
United.
To increase representation
To create new access points.
and improve the employment pipeline.
Helping individuals grow as future creative leaders.
That means making room.
Amplifying voices, empowering perspectives, fostering connections,
And creating spaces for thought leaders to come together.
helping make every space an inclusive space. Building upon ideas
Forming partnerships.
and focusing on sustainability
Instead of reinventing the wheel.
now, tomorrow, and in the future.
There is always work to be done, but we know we are stronger together. Get involved, inspire others.
And take action.
Time to break, reinvent, impact, change.
Join us in transforming the industry brick by brick at brickfoundation.org.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next panel for the BRIC Summit. So my name is Whitney McCombs, and I'm actually a volunteer and advisor here at BRIC. And I've actually been with BRIC since their very first summit back in 2019. So thank you so much for joining us for the BRIC 2022 Summit. So we've already had so many great conversations and learnings today, which is what makes me excited to kick off this next panel, an area where I'm personally very curious and passionate about, being in talent acquisition. So now, before we get started, some of you have already heard this before, so kind of bear with me here. Everyone here is there for here for their unique perspective and what you bring. So here at BRIC, we rely on you sharing your thoughts and feedbacks on these topics. So after this panel, we are going to be breaking out into breakout rooms. And we are going to be talking about what we've heard, but also adding to the conversation. If you are an introvert, please, please, please feel free to use the BRIC Discord channels. We will be recording everything there and actually copy pasting what we did in the breakout room, so you're still included. And what we do with these notes is we collect them and recap our findings and thoughts for the attendees and all of you at this event. So please stick around for the breakout sections. Now, without further ado, I'm here to introduce REINVENT, Redefining the Workforce and Best Practices for Hiring and Retaining the Employees in a Post-COVID World. And I'm going to pass it off to our lovely moderator, Donovan Malloy, Senior Human Resources Business Manager at Microsoft.
Thank you so much, Ann Whitney. I appreciate it. And welcome everyone to the BRIC Summit 2022. It's so exciting to have you all here with us today, and we're looking forward to a great discussion. So I'd like to just take a moment here to introduce our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Rabia Abedin. She is the Manager of Programs and Diversity Outreach at DreamWorks Animation. She builds and drives development programs for early to mid-career artists and creators at the studio. She is passionate about creating pathways into feature productions and television series. Welcome to Rabia. Next up is Debbie Ball. Debbie Ball has spent 30 years advocating for societal change and creating pathways to make it happen. A vice president at Easterseal since 1998, she oversees the organization's workforce employment services throughout Southern California, and in 2018 was tapped as a national subject matter expert by the Department of Labor Office on Disability Employment Policy. Welcome to you, Debbie. Welcoming Stephanie Morse. Stephanie Morse is a lifelong animation fan and champion of creative talent. She is proud to oversee the recruitment and talent development team at Walt Disney Animation Studios. In her role, she leads the studio's production talent acquisition efforts, next-gen programming, college and university relations, and studio onboarding. Stephanie, welcome to you. And finally, happy to welcome Lindsay Pollock. Lindsay Pollock is a New York Times bestselling author and one of the world's leading career and workplace experts. She is passionate about helping individuals and organizations navigate and thrive in the ever-changing world of work. Her latest book is a response to the COVID crisis titled Recalculating: Navigate Your Career Through the Changing World of Work. Thank you for being here, panelists. I'm so happy to have you. And as mentioned here, that's context. Really, what we're looking to talk about today is how we are thinking about the future of the workforce. Over the last few years, we've lived through some of the most disruptive moments we've had in our modern era. Our discussion today will be focused on how that disruption has given us opportunity to redefine the workforce and to set new practices in how we hire and retain employees in a nearly post-COVID world. So thank you all for joining today. Each one of us has had to adjust how we live and work due to the impacts of COVID. Traditionally, our work culture has been very transactional. You clock in, you clock out, you don't ask questions, or you work as long as it takes to do the job. Now that we've become more connected to each other as human beings and the way that we live, whether it's a barking dog or a runaway toddler, it's hard to imagine things going back to the status quo. My first question I'd like to pass to Lindsay to open. How can we embrace a workforce where they are instead of needing the workforce to come to us? Sorry, let me restart there. How can we embrace a workforce where we are embracing everything that is being thrown at us today, and rather than needing the workforce to come to us?
Donovan, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you to the BRIC Foundation for putting this panel together, and I'm so excited to be with my fellow panelists. You know, the first thing that comes to mind, as you said, nearly the end of COVID or almost the end of COVID, is there is no precedent for any of this. And I know the word unprecedented has been totally overused in the past 2 years, but I think a lot of us and a lot of organizations are looking for the right answer. And there isn't one. We are very much in the messy middle of figuring out what the workforce is going to look like, what our careers are going to look like. So I just jotted down a couple of thoughts. The first is, I think we need to assume the best intentions of each other. I think employers need to assume that workers aren't at home because they're lazy or don't think they should work. It's that they feel most productive or safe or creative in those environments. And I think that employees should think that employers want the best for them as well. The second thought I have is we need to be really clear on what our guardrails are, because we've been in this really mushy kind of situation. I get a lot of people saying things like, well, our policy is that you can work from home whenever you want, but if you really cared about your career, you would come in every day. And that's not a fair comment to make, right? We have to be very clear on what the boundaries are. And the third thought I have is, now I think is the time to double or triple down on mission and purpose. And we were just watching that video of people saying why they got into the work that they do, how much it means to them. And I think when you're focused on your passion or the ultimate goal of your work, you start to spend a lot less time thinking about exactly what percentage of time you're at home and exactly what percentage of time you're in the office, as opposed to getting done what is really going to move the needle. So I'll stop there, but those are just a couple of things that have been on my mind.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. And it certainly, I think, resonates with so many of us that have been working to find the right balance. And how do we show up for our full selves in the new day of work while also continuing to meet our goals and our dreams through the work that we contribute every day? And with that, I'd like to pass this next question over to you, Rabia. I'd love to know, what practices and processes are we leaving behind post-COVID that no longer work anymore?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. There's so many things, right? I also have a few things in mind that I wanted to cover off, but collectively, we're all realizing that there is no going back to normal, and the way the life was before the pandemic will not be what it's going to be. It'll be different, and we don't really know how yet. But the important thing is that even though this hasn't happened before to this scale, the business world has been shaken before during other instances, and they found a way to adjust. So in order for companies and studios and businesses to continue to survive and succeed, they have to adapt. And in order to adapt, there's a couple of things that they either need to keep, emphasize more of, or leave behind altogether. And I think one of the first things, like a lot of what Lindsay touched upon, that's going to go away is that traditional workplace culture. There's like this huge massive loss of social interaction, and human beings are very social animals. And yes, technology has allowed us to stay connected, but it's very artificial, right? And we shouldn't discount the effect that virtual interaction has on stunting our ability to genuinely connect with our coworkers, our peers, our leaders, etc. Not many of us have the privilege of saying like, oh my God, I'm so excited to go back to the office and put my nose to the grind and do a good job. If they're excited to go back, it's because they enjoy the people that they work with and they're excited to get that social interaction back on, right? But to play devil's advocate, it takes roughly, let's say 3 months, 100 days or so to form a new habit. And this pandemic, we've been in it for 700 plus days now. So people have gotten used to their schedules being their own. And in a society where it came to the traditional workplace, we had a routine, right? Waking up at a certain time, getting coffee, driving into work, lunch at 12, leaving at 6 or 7. That was our routine. And that reality is no longer sustainable for a lot of people. So especially with how working from home has shifted our perception of time. So now when employees or employers are asking to have, we're ready to welcome you back, offering, some sort of flexibility in that schedule is going to be super key here. A lot of people are talking about a hybrid schedule, allowing for on-site days and off-site days. It'll help make that transition easier for a lot of people. But more importantly, those days that are in the office should be very intentional, right? They should be for meaningful and focused time to connect with your team, with your colleagues, and not just checking a box for attendance. The other big piece that actually it was a good segue into what Lindsay was talking about is like leading with empathy, right? We all have to be more cognizant and empathic when it comes to stressing productivity, the proverbial grind, right? Because we've been in this for 2 years now, and we're all kind of going through this collective trauma. So it's really important to kind of really recognize that. And I think us all being at home in front of a camera, you can see what's going on. It's really humanized us. So we shouldn't kind of look past that once we're back in the office. We should continue that forward, and really what may have seemed, prying or disrespectful in the past, of really sitting down with somebody and being like, how are you really doing, right? Asking those type of meaningful and empathic questions is really going to be vital today more than ever before to foster that connection. I'm talking a lot here, but the one last piece I wanted to really hone in on was providing mental health benefits that are on par with physical health benefits. There's a lot of great companies and studios out there that have, awesome healthcare plans and, childcare arrangements, etc. But mental health, because of its stigmatization and just the lack of understanding of how work impacts mental health, it makes it really hard to provide valuable services for employees. And it's complicated by the fact that there's a difference between those who are suffering from legitimate mental health concerns and, your run-of-the-mill burnout, identifying the differences between those two and how to really address those with serious mental health concerns. And with what's going on with the pandemic, there's going to be a lot more concerns that have come up in the last 2 years. And as people return back to the office, dealing with that transition will have to be addressed. So, thinking of, keeping in mind people who are, suffering from COVID, suffering from the loss of family members and friends from COVID, and dealing with all the things at home, right? Trying to do your job with toddlers and kids running in the background. It's all very, very stressful. And so these things are going to have to be assessed from the top down level, and not really relying on employees to kind of give you the answers through a survey, right? Like that, you're just going to get way too much information that way. And so it's going to take a concerted effort from a lot of people, especially at the top, to figure out how to go about this. And so we're leaving behind a lot. But that doesn't mean that the future has to look bleak. We just have to put in the work.
Thank you for that. I think you bring a great point around the connection. We have to bring ourselves to work, and also thinking about how the institutions we all are a part of are supporting that journey. And to this point, I'd love to open up to the panel just a question around the manager and employee relationship here, and how that needs to shift to be able to support the new ways that we're thinking about showing up at work. How do you all think about the way managers may need to operate differently or show up differently to support employees in this new age?
I'll say I feel like employees are really looking for managers to value their whole selves. So looking at who they are both as an individual and the work that they're contributing to the workplace, and taking all of that into account as they're working with that person, whether it's talking about flexibility and what that looks like for them individually as we start to assess what a return to work environment might look like, whether that is in developing kind of project and growth and development plans for individuals. I think there's really a need to consider the full human and the full person in everything that we're doing as we grow, develop, and help lead our employees through change.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. And with that, I'm going to switch topics a bit, but I'm going to stay with you. Many of us have now likely heard about the Great Resignation or Great Reshuffle, whatever your preferred vernacular is there. But we all know that there is a shift in terms of the prioritization of how the workforce is thinking about how they show up to work and what they're willing to give up to be a part of the workforce. So what do we think are the underpinnings of that? And how do you think we are thinking and contributing to the mass shift in how employees approach work, given all of that context?
Definitely a big question. And I'll give some thoughts, but would love to hear if the other panelists have some added learnings, especially from a research perspective. But I think, speaking from the entertainment industry, I feel like we're in a moment where now more than ever, people are really reevaluating their lives, looking at what they want in terms of their work-life balance, in terms of their personal well-being, in terms of the impact that they want to have in the work that they're doing. And I think with the pandemic, we've also seen increased opportunity for people to work remotely, for people to consider different industries. I think depending on the person's individual situation, there might be kind of a reevaluation as they're looking at childcare or elder care and what that looks like in pandemic and in post-pandemic times. There's a chance to look at cost of living and where they're located, with more remote options available. And, in a world where within entertainment, we're already seeing more and more blurred lines between entertainment, animation, VFX, gaming, technology, I think we're at an interesting moment where it's this convergence of employees reevaluating themselves as workers and what they're looking for, and increased opportunity within various industries. So it's an interesting intersection and kind of moment in time that I think the pandemic has just amplified. And in my mind, companies need to really embrace this moment to relook at their values and what they stand for as a business. And I think that as opposed to it being kind of a written mantra, it needs to go beyond page to actually be lived values and have work to actually tie those values into every process, every interaction, every system that's built within the company, so that people are really feeling the authenticity of those values within their day-to-day life. I think that is paramount and really important that we're all doing that work right now and taking that time to reevaluate ourselves as companies alongside our employees.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's about living in the moment, right? Embracing this opportunity that we have to think differently while the disruption is live, and continue on this vein then with all of that as the undercurrent of how we're thinking about this. What do we think it's going to take to attract and retain great talent in this new environment?
This is Debbie. I'll take that for at least a couple of thoughts. I think that great flexibility is going to be just paramount. I also think that the intangibles are going to be even more important than the tangibles, probably more so than it's been in our past. I think that, as Stephanie said, people are really reevaluating what's important to them and what isn't. And a lot of people are realizing the things that they thought that were important to them before are no longer important. Along the same lines, though, I've seen so many people come back into the workforce who realize that they'd gotten away from their passion, and now they're seeking to get back into that passion spot. So I think that's another thing that we need to be real about. And if we're working toward social justice, or if we're working toward, a common community strengthening goal, we need to be real with that. And we need to make sure that people are understanding that those are the underpinnings of what we do. It's not just, we do have value and we do have impact every day.
No, thank you for that, Debbie. And sticking with you and going even further, right, as we think about the impacts of what we need to show up in our values and how we attract and retain employees, what else can we think about in terms of things like our interview processes that we can adapt or change to help find the right talent quickly?
Yeah, there is so much that we can do. It's one of those things where we've gotten so far away from the people. I was doing a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and one of the human resource partners on there said, we need to put human back in human resources. And that's so key. And I think it just underscores everything that we're talking about today. It really is about the individual, and it's about making their passions light up. That's why we come to work. That's where we get our values. So let's make it possible. Let's break down some of those barriers. Let's take away some of those gates that keep people out. You have to jump through so many hoops that are non-person centric before you even get to a person that might or might not discuss your resume with you. We need to abolish those things. We need to eliminate those as much as we can. You know, community is built on community and its social network and its value systems and it's everything that we shared collectively. That's what we need to get back to. We need to get back to that, not a logarithm that, you know, kicks people out because they didn't capitalize a T. Or their resume doesn't have the right buzzwords on it. Same thing with when we're interviewing people, you know, keep an open mind. Think about the actual critical steps that are involved in the job. Don't think about everything that the job description says. You know, a lot of times those are just fluff because we need to put fluff in there. But if you're thinking about what's really important, is it vital that this person that's sitting across from me can do 98% of this job, but they can't do 2%? Am I really not going to hire them for that 2%? Or is it more important that I can bring this fabulous person on, knowing that they can provide me assets in a different manner and knowing that they can benefit my bottom line?
Oh, thank you for that, Debbie. I think that is a lot of food for thought. And I'm sure we all agree that the hiring process can often be far removed from where we are as individuals, and take the time to reinvest and relook at how we do that. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I'd love to pass this over to you, Lindsay, as a starting place, and continuing on this idea of how we adjust to this kind of new age and looking at the priorities of workers. We also have to think about the multi-generations of talent that we have in the marketplace that are all reevaluating their priorities. How do you think this change is impacting the way that we should think about hiring multi-generational talent in the workplace?
So I spend a lot of time thinking about generational diversity, and I think it really is an element of diversity, equity, and inclusion to think about age. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that we have 5 generations in the workplace for the first time in history, and that includes people of the traditionalist era who are in their 70s and 80s. And I know that doesn't sound possible, but we have more Americans today over the age of 85 who are still working and thriving than ever before. So as people work longer and live longer and want to contribute longer, we're not going to see 30-year careers. We're going to be see people kind of come in and out on these different trajectories for maybe 50 or 60 years. I know that sort of sounds scary, but I think it's incredibly empowering to think that you have all this time. So you have the traditionalists, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and now the Gen Zs coming in, which means you might be sitting across a table or on a Zoom call with someone 40 or 50 years different from you in age. And I think our reaction to that is often, whoa, you know, how are we going to get along? But I think our similarities are so much more powerful than our differences. And if we're all really aligned to a common purpose, if we all are really excited about the work that we're doing, we can be even more happy that people with different perspectives are sitting with each other. And so the way that I think about it in terms of generational diversity is, you know, we often complain, oh, these young kids are coming in and they all want to be on TikTok, you know, at work. I don't know what people say. But I don't think that we would want a culture or organizations where we said, oh, these young kids are great. They're exactly like me. Nothing has changed. We have no new ideas. This is sort of where we get our vibrancy. And just one of the things that I think about is a technology entrepreneur named Gina Pell coined this term that I love. She said, rather than thinking of yourself as a millennial, you know, or a baby boomer, she said, I think we should all think of ourselves as perennials. And a perennial is someone who knows their history, they know where they've come from, but they keep up with the times. And so I aspire to know people across all generations and to kind of know the best practices of each generation rather than feeling like we all have to be in our little silos.
No, thank you for that, Lindsay. And just the idea, right, of being able to both know your history and embrace the context of which we've all lived in these different generations as a way to inform how we show up and support one another and build more inclusion, I think is really powerful. And I appreciate you being able to share that. I got a good question in the chat, just drilling in here. Maybe this is a bit more of a focus on Gen Z and students who may be coming up in the next generation. How do we think about how we should empower and prepare them for this new type of hiring process and flexibility?
I'll just give a quick stat. There was a new survey from YouGov that said the number one thing, or something like 75% of Gen Z said what they wanted was experiential recruiting experiences. So they want to know what it's really going to be like to work in your environment culturally and in terms of the job. So I'll stop with that, but I thought that might be a good starting point for us.
I think a piece of it also is educating and bringing that awareness to this group of people, is that you can find opportunities anywhere, especially in today's current climate. You can sit, I was actually talking to faculty at Louisiana Delta Community College, and they were saying that I'm based in LA, and so they were saying that their students would have such a hard time thinking of opportunities in LA because they just don't see themselves there. And so I would want to meet with those folks and tell them, like, there's absolutely 100% opportunities that you can come and work for companies in LA, in another state, in New York, wherever it is, and still be based out of a state like Louisiana or in the Midwest or wherever you are. And so I think a lot of people they're just not aware that you can find opportunities, internships, entry-level jobs, etc., job at any level really, while still working from home. So I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you for that, Rabia. All right. Well, shifting again here a little bit and just moving more to continued broader context and how we kind of take all of this information and we bring it to life. Debbie, I'd love for you to just take a moment to comment on how companies overall should shift their perspective on the working culture and kind of embrace the tide of this change. What do you think it's important for companies, managers and leaders to take away as they start to think about implementing some of these changes, given the new context of how we all want to approach our work today?
It's going to surprise you, but I say flexibility and creativity. It's really that one-on-one connection with the associate or the employee and learning what's meaningful to them. I think that as managers and leaders, we all learn about different communication styles, and it's part of the emotional intelligence, and we respond to people. Hopefully we're still doing this in corporate America. I know it's gotten away from it in a few years, but I think that people are going to be demanding that really more and more, and what is important to you. And, just like we were talking earlier, but, kids and dogs and everything running around in the background. And we've become accustomed to that, and we've become accustomed to sharing that with our coworkers, which is something that many of us can sit next to someone for years and never share that kind of thing, versus on a Zoom, in 30 seconds, it's like, yeah, this is my world. So I think that connectivity is really going to be important. I also think really valuing people for what they have, and not trying to put them in boxes. I think that, the best companies are those that are flexible and creative, and are the ones that are looking to empower people in their current skill sets and help them grow. But that's not by keeping them in a box, right? That's by noticing where their best skills are and helping them lift those skills up, and maybe taking away some of the skills that aren't as necessary, right? So it's a constant job carve, I think, to really get people in the right spot to where their benefits really shine in, and where it benefits the employer and the employee at the same time.
Mm-hmm. When we think about that and we think about how we need to shift the change, and this may be related to a question that just came in chat, but how do we actually think about influencing the decision makers that are part of this process, and the folks that we know are actively thinking and preparing to a return to the office or kind of moving into a hybrid style of working? What do we think for folks who are as employees coming into these roles? What are things that they should think about doing and influencing the way that they think and approach their work?
Lindsay, I saw you nodding.
I'll throw something out there. So I coach a lot of people on how to ask for what you want at work, right? And the key learning, and I think Stephanie's going to jump into, is, it's not really helpful to say, Donovan, you're my boss. I would like to work from home because I want to be at home. It's like, well, that really is not such a great argument. The argument is, Donovan, I know the goal of the company is that we, produce X amount of volume a day, or that we close X number of clients. I believe I can be more effective doing that while working from home. So you really have to put your argument, whether it's you as an individual or you advocating on behalf of your team or your company, to say, to achieve our goals as an organization, I believe that this strategy or this tactic or this allowance is going to get us there. I would love to say that just saying it's the right thing to do is going to move the needle, but I think that that's not really the case. I think we have to make a business argument for why these strategies are good. And I will say there's a ton of research about there. Diversity improves the bottom line. Flexibility improves the bottom line. So show those numbers as opposed to making it feel like a personal preference.
And I completely agree with what she was saying. I think that having the business need connected to what you're asking for personally is huge in terms of actually sharing why you are wanting to potentially change a work style or even push a project forward. I was thinking as you were asking that question, Donovan, about even I look at the employee resource groups that are within Disney, and I think that is an amazing way to actually have a voice and lead some of this meaningful work forward. So I think whether it's employees being empowered to communicate with their direct leader, whether it's employees joining peer groups that are empowered to lead efforts forward that they're really passionate about, I think all of those are ways that people can speak up and be a part of making a difference and really influencing the leaders within our businesses.
Thank you both for those reflections and ultimately, right, trying to get us to a place of understanding and connection, but always, right, kind of just building that case for yourself so that there is clear justification as to why your personal situation can benefit and the company can continue to benefit as well. I'm getting a lot of questions in the chat that are hovering around a question of equity, especially within the industries that we're talking through. I love to kind of open up to the panel and just see, how do you think the impacts of this change and moving into a hybrid world give us an opportunity to improve and make the workforce more equitable?
I'll jump on that one. This is Debbie. I think that one of the ways that we're benefiting, the workforce benefits, is that there is a greater inclusion of people with disabilities. And given the amount of people with disabilities in our population, I think it's really an untapped resource. So I personally am really excited about that. And when you think about the buying power that the people with disabilities have, and I think it's like $22 billion. It's between 22 billion and 17 trillion, if you go US to global, dollars worth of buying power that the disability community has. Bringing that diversity in, making sure that those voices are heard and making sure that those skill sets are captured and included in everything that we do is really important. And it goes along the lines of everything that we've been talking about the creativity and the one-on-one and building a more responsive, I'm going to say more responsive workforce, but also tapping into people who have never been employed before or have been underemployed.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else want to contribute to that?
I'll just add, I've seen that some talk in the chat too. We have to be really careful of the potential inequities of flexibility, right? That, oh, well, if you come in to the workplace, we're going to give you more attention. You're going to be the one who gets promoted. The one who stays at home or works part-time isn't. Where you live, you're going to get paid less if you move out of California or out of New York. I think we have to be really deliberate to create policies that are transparent and equitable. And I think we can all practice that. One example I think that's become really common is that some people are in a conference room and somebody is on the phone or on a Zoom screen and we exclude them. And so I know companies that now say whenever there is a meeting where somebody needs to be remote, we are all going to go remote, or we're going to have a liaison in the room whose job it is to include the voice of the person who's not there. So I think on our own kind of micro levels, we can start to be more equitable and inclusive in the way we do business, understanding that some people are not going to be able to do it in the same way.
Absolutely, Lindsay. And this goes back to the overall systems and processes that are holding this all up, right? And the need to continue to reevaluate what actually makes a fair workplace, given that our workplace is now expanded, often to include our homes. And for those of you who may like to travel, maybe in many different places where you can sneak in and send some emails and take calls, right? And I think the balance that we're looking to get here there is really important. And we have to continue to reflect on what are the things that both in roles where we are leaders and in positions of power and influence where we can help to build that bridge of equity, and continue to care for each individual human and the nuance that goes along with that. So thank you. Thank you so much for kind of contributing to that. I'd like to kind of use a closing questions just before we move out into our breakout rooms. And I'd love for just general takeaways here as we think about the most important things that are imperative to remember as we start to engage the workforce and we truly start to move to more of this hybrid and flexible world. What is one thing that we want to make sure that people take away around how they can take advantage of this moment, and also how we can continue to influence the people that are in positions of power to really move towards more of that equity across the workforce?
This is Debbie. I think that if you haven't done an inventory, you should, whether it be a personal inventory or a supervisory inventory of your personal life or your supervisor life, and really what is important to you and what can you do differently. And then along those same lines, how do you ask for what you want? And what is the negotiation piece behind that ask? How does it benefit both parties? Because it needs to be, I mean, business is economic development at the end of the day. That's all it is.
And I'll say, I think that we really need to look at, we've said this multiple times in this session, but we really need to look at the humans that are working with us and for us. And I think that there's a real need to make sure that we're looking deeply about what inclusion looks like for each person that's working within our company, and building a culture of inclusion and flexibility that is based on what that means to the people that are working alongside us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other closing thoughts from the group?
I'll just add one thing. We recently went through this exercise at work of redefining what an executive champion does, and really just like not assuming like, okay, they're going to leverage their power of leadership to communicate initiatives, DEI initiatives, and the folks on their team that they work with, and championing them, but stop assuming and really just lay it out of like, here's what we expect from you. And it's just become ever more important to make that clear, especially in this world of like being on the computer all day, seeing emails come in and out all day, and you're not really reading of all the things that are happening across your company or your company. So really leveraging those executive champions at work to champion for you when you're not in the room, and then also championing those initiatives that are happening that you need people to be aware of, because we can no longer just rely on more Zoom meetings or more emails to spread the message. We really need people to do that for us.
Couldn't agree more, Robbie. Thank you so much. And thank you to this panel. I hope you all enjoyed the discussion here. So many great nuggets from our conversation. And hopefully that informs you as you get ready to go out into your breakout rooms. So just as a note, we are going to move you all into breakout rooms, and they will be focused on kind of digging into two questions. One, how to attract and retain people in the Great Resignation. And two, how can we change the interview, hiring, and management systems to meet people where they're at? So as a reminder, you do have the option to use the Discord channel if you prefer to type and respond and think about how you want to engage there. Otherwise, you will be slowly moved into your breakout rooms and then back for a quick recap and discussion. With that, I believe the rooms are opening. You can go ahead and join in, and we will see you on the other side. Thank you so much.